Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Let's go!
Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Martin. On this episode, I have Scott Bourne. Scott is a semi-retired professional photographer with 50 years of photography experience. Scott was an Olympus Visionary and professional wildlife photographer, author, and lecturer who specializes in birds, and his work has appeared in more than 200 publications. He's a pioneer in the digital photography and online space and was named one of the 30 most influential photographers on the web. Now let's hear a word from our podcast partner and get to the show. The Life of Phys Podcast is lit by Harlow. Harlow is on a mission to empower creators to elevate their creativity with lighting kits made to last and built to inspire. These lights are bold, beautiful, and powerful because Harlow believes that your lights deserve to be seen. To learn more, follow them on Instagram at Harlow Creators or online at www.harlow.com. And don't forget to use our discount code Tyson10 to save 10% on your order.
Hi, my name is Scott Bourne, and I have spent 50 years with a camera in my hand, and I like to protect memories and tell stories using visual media, I guess is the best way to approach it. And I'm glad to be on your show, dude.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm so grateful that you gave me the time today. I look at the work you've done in your career, the way you're willing to help people currently, just to share that knowledge. It's outstanding. What got you interested in photography?
Well, when I was a kid, like everybody else, there was a camera, a family camera. It happened to be like a Brownie, Kodak Brownie. Most people will have to Google that to see what it is. And I just was sort of enamored with it. I would play with it. I didn't take that many pictures, but I was always interested in it. And, it really started, frankly, with birding. I became a birder at age 8. My family showed me like some birds, and I saw that they could fly. And as an 8-year-old boy, things that could fly, I was all in. So I started studying birding, and then had no idea that would lead to me being a bird photographer decades later. But that wanting to document birds was a big factor in it. The other factor was just like a lot of things in life, luck. I was dating a girl named Jackie Russell. Her dad was a photojournalist at the Indianapolis Star. I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. And he knew I was kind of interested in photography, so he gave me an old Nichromat FTN and a 50 millimeter lens and a roll of Tri-X, and sent me on my way and gave me some tips here and there. And I kind of dug it. Well, my half sister lived in Bloomington, Indiana, which is home to the second largest newspaper in the state, the Bloomington Tribune. Herald and Tribune, and my brother-in-law was named Rex, and he was the sports director, and he got an all-access pass to photograph the Indy 500. And he didn't have staff to do it, nor budget to pay them. And he said, Scott, you're kind of interested in photography, and I know you love going to the Indy 500. I've got a pass. If you want to go up there and take some pictures, if we use any of them, I'll put them in the paper. I don't know if I can pay you or not. I'll find out, but you can have the pass. So I said, sure. It gives me better access. I'll go. Now, I didn't know anything at all about photography, really. I kind of knew how it worked, but I didn't have any idea what I was doing. But I had this pass, and I had the best pass. It's called an over-the-wall pass. It means there's no place on the speedway that you can't go. And those are very hard to get. I don't know how he got one, but I got it. And so I'm walking down Gasoline Alley, and there's a big booth that says Nikon, and the guy notices I have the gold pass, and he says, hey, you got that old Nichromat. Would you like to try this new camera? It's called the Nikon F1. And I said, sure. He goes, here, I'll loan it to you for the day. Just bring it back when you're done and have fun with it. Here's a 200 millimeter lens, and there's a new thing called a motor drive. I'll put that on there and show you how it works. And of course, I'd never seen any of this stuff, but I acted like I knew what it was. And I kept walking, and I was thrilled. I'm like, oh, look at this. It goes, shh, shh, shh. I was just thrilled with the fact that I didn't have to press the button. It was like 1.5 frames per second. And then I kept going, and then a guy from Associated Press had a booth, and he saw me. He goes, hey, I see you're with Gold Pass there. Do you want to do some stringing for Nikon or for AP? And I said, sure. I didn't know what a stringer was. I had no idea what he was asking me, but I figured, hey, the thing to do is say yes to everything. So threw a black armband on me, gave me a giant bag of Tri-X film, which was a good thing because I only had the money to bring 4 rolls with me, which wouldn't have lasted long. And they gave me a place to stand on what's called the short chute of the second turn. And some old guy saw me and he goes, "Do you know what you're doing, kid?" And I said, "Not really." He goes, "Here, just stand over 3 feet from me on the left as the car goes by, put your lens on it, press the button until we run out of film. Take the film when you're out of the camera, put it in the empty bag that's got the number on it. They'll come pick it up from you. You're good to go." So I'm doing that. And then Tom Sneva has the good graces to crash right in front of me. And I get it somehow. And it appears on every newspaper sports page in the United States. And I make $3,032, which is enough money to buy a brand new Camaro at the time. And
that
I
is
said,
incredible.
"I'm going to be a photographer." That's how I got started.
That's such an incredible story. It's about saying yes to things that come your way, and just rolling with them. And that's something that it took me a long time to learn, to just say yes to opportunity.
Yeah, that's what I figured I'd have to do. So I got a job with Hemmings Motorsports News, a now defunct paper that was covering auto racing around the world. And I got to travel the world making a grand total of $52.50 each and every week. And living in the back of race vans, and the race teams would take pity on me and feed me and let me sleep in them because that's really all the money I had. And I did that for 6 years, and I got to meet some of the coolest people. I became acquainted with a guy named Parnelli Jones and Mario Andretti and all these big names at the time. Not so many people would recognize them now. AJ Foyt. And anyway, at the end of the 6 years, I looked up at the paycheck and said, I'm not getting a raise. So either I'm not very good at this or there's not much of a future in it. So that's when I decided to learn how to do portraits. And I saw a job listing in some industry paper in Arkansas, and I took a job because I wanted to learn how to use a portrait camera. The guy had a Hasselblad 501C, taught me how to take portraits, did that for 6 months, started my own studio. So then I did the wedding and portrait thing like everybody else for about 6 years and made a bunch of money, because that is where the money is, folks. If you're trying to figure out how to get paid in photography, that's where the money is. But there is a heavy duty cost dealing with bridezillas and momzillas. So I did that for about 6 years and sold my studio, made enough money to okay, I'm done with that. And then I said, I'm going to be a nature photographer. Didn't really know what I was doing. It didn't dawn on me all this time, Tyson, that I could make money as a bird photographer. So I was just doing birding separately. And then I saw this article about, a guy who was a bird photographer in Australia. And I thought, oh, you can do that? I know a lot about birds. So I just started focusing my photography first on wildlife. I did coastal brown bears. Those are the largest grizzly bears in the world. I did wolves. I did moose. And then I did a lot of bald eagles and birds. And that sort of over a decade became just birds. And that's when I really started to gel and make money. Because the one thing that most beginners do not understand, and which is extremely counterintuitive, is that if you want to make a lot of money, you need to specialize, because there's no way for people to find you any other way. So I specialized in bird photography, and then kind of in raptors, and then kind of in bald eagles. And it got to the point where if somebody needed a bald eagle photograph, they knew to look for me. And that's where the money is. If you're the person that everybody goes to for that, then that's what you get. Now, what happens is everybody throws their portfolio up and goes, "But what if they like this picture and would want to buy it too?" It doesn't work that way. I mean, God forbid your kid gets a brain aneurysm. Are you going to look in the yellow pages and for a brain doctor and find an ad for a guy that says Monday through Friday brain surgery, Saturdays and Sundays Volkswagen repair? It's you want a specialist. So by specializing, I ended up making a name for myself, getting published a lot, and things just sort of took off from there.
That's such great wisdom to share. I mean, you have to focus on your craft. You have to work and share one thing over and over and over. And that's what people, like you said, that's what people get to know you for.
Yeah, you can have different identities. That's the thing I tell people. Have multiple websites. Have one for your landscape, one for your birds, one for your motorsports, and don't connect them. So that, if people do a Google search for bald eagle photography or eagle photographs, they're going to get my site. It's simple as that. You want to make sure that whatever people are searching for, that you have that there and that you specialize in that. You don't even need a lot of pictures. 12 or 15 is enough. And if you can replicate that on a regular basis, then you can get business. It's a lot harder today. I will admit that. I mean, when I came up, we didn't have the internet at all. There was no computers. So everything was done the old fashioned way, with slides sent via the mail to the editor, and they'd keep them for 3 to 6 months, send them back, and you'd see what slides they picked, and then you'd have a license agreement in place. And then eventually with big stock agencies, which got blown up by things like iStock and Microstock. But in the old days, it was actually easier to make a living. It's harder now because everybody's a photographer, and every dentist I meet wants to be me.
I found the wildlife shooters up here to be there was two groups. There was the small group of people that were willing to help, the new people. And then there was the big group of people that would just stick their nose up at you because, you're using a 200 to 500 from Nikon and not, a 500 f4. They just, the arrogance level. And it really just rubbed me the wrong way because I've always just wanted to help people. I wanted to find a group of people that would help me learn. And then, there's a group that want to help people learn. And then there's the group that just wants to break people down. So I love that idea of having multiple websites so people can see the multiple genres that you shoot without being clouded by everything else.
And it's important to move away from toxic people as fast as you can. I'll never forget an old wildlife photographer from England told me, he says, unless you're using a prime lens, no one's going to buy your work. My most famous photograph, a photograph that has generated 7 figures in income for me, is called Cranes in the Fire Mist. And it was made with a Sigma 3 to 800 f5.6 zoom lens. It was a third-party lens on a Nikon body. And so, I did pretty good with a zoom lens, despite that guy's prediction. It wasn't even a brand name, quote unquote, lens. It's not, people say gear doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's not the reason you win. If it was, then I would simply go to that place where Tiger Woods buys his golf clubs and get me a set, and then I'd be hitting 300-yard drives. You got to put in the time behind it and know what you're doing. But I can make pretty much any piece of gear work. Some gear works a lot better than others, which makes my job easier. But if I have to cope, I'll cope. But there's nothing wrong with going at this with a quote-unquote beginner's kit. If you get the right images, here's the thing. I really want to share this, Tyson, because I know there are people who are aspirational that want to do what I've done for a living. And it's important to know this. The internet is not indicative of the real world when it comes to how this all works. I've licensed more than 4,000 images in my career. I've been publicized in 200 books and magazines. I've written 14 books. I've been on television shows, etc. I've dealt with photo editors my whole life, and not one of them has ever asked me any of the following questions. What camera did you use to make this? What f-stop did you use to shoot it? What was the ISO? What was the shutter speed? What was the lens? Not a single buyer, and I'm talking about the people that write the checks to me, has ever asked me those questions. And yet, those are the only questions I get asked on the internet. It should show you that there's a big disconnect between what needs to happen and what is happening.
I think people now with the internet and social media and, YouTube, and there is people who are making, millions of dollars, very small percentage, but they just want that image or that video they make to have that little bit of viral success that brings in quick money. They don't look at the long game, establishing themselves so images can create financial income over the long haul, not just the quick, fly by night. You got some money, and you're and you're set now, but earn that money, have that money come in over the long haul, bide your time, work for it. And life, will continue to give.
Residual income is the secret to wealth. I do 10-year license deals all the time. So I make the picture 11 years ago, license it 10 years ago. I've gotten a check for it every year for the last 10 years. That residual income, the same thing you get from books, same thing you get from other licensing deals for like greeting cards, magazines, whatever. The residual income is where the money is. People ask me all the time, well, why aren't you selling prints? Because the effort I have to go into making money off of a $300 or $400 print compared to licensing an image one time for $25,000, it doesn't equate. The money's in licensing and residual income. It's not in selling prints. Now, if you can sell prints and that helps you get through to your next level, that's great. And for most people, selling a print is necessary just to tell their spouse, see, I made some money at this. Can I get the new lens? And that's a very valid deal. That's very valid. Sell a print to make the spouse happy so that you get permission to get the new lens. I get it. But long term, you're trading time for money, and you're never going to get wealthy doing that. The money is in licensing and productizing what you do. That's the one thing I want photographers to think about. You've got this knowledge and you've got this access and you've captured these moments. That needs to become a tangible product if you're going to make money at it. And one exercise that I used to teach a business class in photography, I'd say, go to the downtown area of any major city with a notepad and walk 4 blocks in a circle. And on both sides of the street, take note of every photograph you see. You'll see a photograph on a bus billboard. You'll see a photograph on maybe a billboard hanging over the store. You'll see signage in the store. You'll see window displays with photographs. You'll see some sort of multimedia display on the street for the newspaper rack. You'll see the bus benches, on and on and on. You'll see hundreds of photographs, and they all have one thing in common. Somebody sold them. And why not you?
Exactly.
That's how I approached it. I went and did this exercise for myself. I was like, well, man, that guy sold that picture. How come it wasn't me? I could make that picture. So I figured out how to productize things. And that was another big kind of change for me when I was able to create products. So I started doing my own special books for collectors where I would do only 10 editions. They would be very high bespoke publications that might cost me $10,000-$15,000 to make. I'd sell them for $50,000. I had 10 or 12 patrons that would buy them. That kind of stuff. When you're working in a very tiny environment, as long as you're getting paid, it doesn't matter if you're internet famous. Being internet famous doesn't pay the mortgage.
That is so true. Do you have any places where people can go and they can kind of learn how to build residual income with their work? I know you got lots of books out there. I did write a book. Unfortunately, it's like at least 10 years old. It's called Going Pro. You can still buy it on Amazon. I wrote it with my good friend Skip Cohen, who used to be president of Hasselblad USA. We wrote that book, I think in 2010 or 11, to try to help people. And it's pretty old, but there's still stuff on licensing. There's still advice from everybody in there, from Steve McCurry to Ann Geddes to whoever. It's sort of a starting point. I'm not pushing the book here to make money because I get like $1.50 for every copy sold. Well, Scott, you just got $1.50 because I just ordered it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's on Amazon. That's a good starting place. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of business classes in photography, and I'll tell you why. Because they're not popular. If I've spoken at every major photo conference in North America, and I've spoken at a couple of other ones outside of North America. And if I do a class on business, 30 people will sign up. If I do a class on selecting the right gear for wildlife photography, 300 people will show up. So the organizers don't tend to do a lot of business classes because they just don't fill up. It's not sexy. But the truth is, being a professional photographer is 85% sales, 15% photography. And if you can't get good at sales, go do something else or hire somebody who can do the sales for you, because you're gonna starve. You know, the sales work is the real deal. I used to get up at 4:30 every morning because it was 7:30 back east where the editors were. The gatekeepers don't show up to work till 8, so I'd call the editors at their desk at 7:30, often get through, find out what their want list was for the next 3 months, and start punching out pictures. You know, it's that sales work that makes you the money. Taking pictures, I can teach a monkey how to do that. But being able to craft a vision that meets the needs of a publisher is a different story.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. I mean, as boring as learning business and learning the ins and out of behind the scenes sounds to a lot of people, it is actually it's the ground stones of building yourself into a business and establishing yourself in a career. Yeah. So I saw that book on your list of books and I popped it into Amazon. It said I could have it for tomorrow. So
awesome. Well, I hope you enjoy it.
I love to learn. See, I love that stuff. I love learning the ins and outs.
The thing that really puts people off, Tyson, is the sales part. And that's because salesmanship has a bad reputation. But I learned salesmanship from a guy named Zig Ziglar. And yes, it's old fashioned. And yes, I'm a boomer, blah, blah, blah. But go on YouTube and look up Zig Ziglar, because this is the guy that taught me everything I know about sales. And he said something early on that really resonated with me. He said, sales is not something you do to somebody. It's something you do for somebody. You're helping people make decisions that they already want. I'll give you an example. This is a little in the weeds, and if it's too in the weeds, stop me. But like if you want to do something for Birdwatching Magazine, which is a magazine I've been published in several times. So every magazine, the way they work is they have an editorial meeting at the beginning of each month. And at the editorial meeting, they discuss the next quarter, not this current quarter, but the next quarter's publication, because they usually have 90-day lead times. So they'll say, all right, it's January 1st. We're going to talk about the April 1st book. They call it the April 1st book. That means magazine. And they'll talk about what they're going to cover in April. They'll say, well, April is a time when birds are in breeding plumage in Florida. So we want to do an article on seabirds, waterbirds, shorebirds in breeding plumage. And they'll assign that article to somebody at the magazine, and they'll say, I need 25 column inches on this, and I need 10 inches of art. Now, that's where the photographers need to pay attention. That word art means they need a photo or photos. It's just a commodity to the guy that's filling out the story. He's got to write the story, but he's got to get that 10 inches of art. So now he's got a job to do, just like your job. If you work at a paint store or at a gas station, you have certain tasks you have to accomplish to get paid. He has this task to accomplish to get paid. And when he's accomplished it, he gets to go home. So if he's doing a story on bald eagle navigation, I happen to be an expert in that. And he contacts me and says, have you got anything that shows how bald eagles fly? Well, sure I do. How many column inches are we looking to fill here? And I provide that info for him. I've helped him. I'm not selling him something. I'm helping him solve a problem. And he's grateful to me because now he's got that put to bed. He's going to get paid. I'm going to get paid. Everything works. So understanding that you're helping people do the thing they need to do is important. If somebody does sell prints, well, you got a new home and you got this big wall and you want to make it beautiful. Well, it's important to whoever's designing and decorating the home to make it beautiful. If you help them solve that problem, you're a hero. You're not a schmuck. I just really get tired of people treating salesmanship as if it's some kind of sleazy skill. It's a very important skill, and we all practice it every day. You're selling yourself to your girlfriend, who's then your wife. You're still selling her after you're married because you got to keep married, and you're selling yourself to your kids because, well, they got to obey you. You're selling yourself to your boss because he doesn't want to fire you. It just boils down to it's part of our everyday lives. Learn how to do it well, and you can learn it from an old-fashioned guy like Zig Ziglar for free on YouTube.
I'm going to look him up. I do sales every single day. That's my 9-to-5 career is selling people aftermarket off-road auto parts. So I understand it's it's weird because I leave work after selling all day, and I try to turn my sales brain back on when I get home for the podcast or for me, it was always trying to sell a print, but now I'm seeing the light. And I find I still struggle. I struggle putting my sales cap back on because, I don't want to be that guy, you know. I don't want people to think I'm just trying to sell them something.
Well, here's an example Well, yeah, but you're trying to solve a problem for them. So here's an example of what I did. So I have I have 400,000 bald eagle pictures. So I hired a direct marketing company run by a friend of mine named Dave to do what's called a smile and dial operation. Yeah, the dreaded telephone solicitor. But you know what? It works. And we bought a list of every company in the United States that had the word Eagle in its name, like Goodyear, Eagle Tire and Rubber, Eagle Hardware, Eagle Restaurant. And there are tens of thousands of these companies in the United States because the bald eagle is the U.S. symbol. It's a common thing that occurs in a business name. So these guys would call up and say, hi, I noticed that your name of your company is Eagle Hardware. I happen to represent the most successful bald eagle photographer in the world. His name's Scott Bourne. And he's got some amazing images that you could use to grow your business and you could use as the touchstone of the way you communicate with people. It could be your logo. It could be on your marketing materials. Can I arrange a time to talk with your designer about the kind of stuff we have available? And would Tuesday or Thursday work? Now, that's a 20-second conversation. They're going to blow you out of the water with a no about 98% of the time. But if you call 100 people a day, 10 will say yes. Of those 10, 2 will buy. That metric makes you a six-figure income.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a matter of numbers. It's like, well, when I was young, I'm still ugly, but I was especially ugly when I was young. If I wanted to go out with a girl in my school, I had to ask 100 of them out to get one. So I just started asking. It was sort of like the Dumb and Dumber movie where the guy goes, will you go out with me? And she goes, like there's a 1 in a million chance. He goes, there's a chance.
I love that. I love that analogy. That's fantastic. Man,
and you need to do this. You need to do this, Tyson, if you really want to get in. And I don't, I'm sorry I turned this into a sales or marketing podcast, but it just seems to be where we're going. If you want to do this, you need to do it understanding again that you're helping people. You need to do it with authenticity. You need to do it with passion. And this is the most important thing I can say to people when it comes to success. You need to be too stupid to know you can fail.
Okay. So I just need to
Do you know what that means?
No. Okay, if you could explain that, that'd be great.
It means you just have to be like a guy that's clueless. Like, well, of course I'm going to ask the homecoming queen out to the prom. And of course she's going to say yes. You have to be clueless and not realize that, no, she isn't. You have to be too stupid to know you could possibly fail. You have to assume everybody's going to say yes.
You just have to go in with that attitude. Okay. I understand.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk about with this particular thing, we can move on after this, is you have to be able to articulate with specificity why. A guy named Simon Sinek wrote a great book on why. I highly recommend everybody read it that wants to do what we're talking about for a living. If you can articulate why you do what you do, not what, but why, you can be successful, because I've proven this throughout my life. People don't care what you do. They care why you do it. And if you can explain that in a compassionate, compelling way, you can get paid.
Okay. Perfect. I'm taking notes as you're talking. So
yeah, Simon Sinek's books on why. You need to read those. They're just truly life-changing for me. And when I switched to that approach and started talking about my why, I switched on my website. I had an artist statement instead of an about page. Most people have an about page. Well, I've won 3 awards at PPA, and I shoot with a Canon R5, and I've got a Canon 600. That's all a bunch of what.
Okay.
And it puts people to sleep. The why is much more interesting.
I'm gonna look that book up too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put links for those 2 books How to Go Pro in the Y book in the show notes.
And after you read them, if you have questions, I'll answer them.
Amazing. I appreciate that you're so willing to help others.
Well, that's why I think I'm still here. I've been pretty lucky, and unfortunately, my aging decrepitude is slowing down my body, but the mind still works. And if I can help, I really do want to. That's why I do these shows. That's why I do what I do. Why I write blog posts and why I do podcasts. Why I'm on social media is because I need to find a way to get people to understand that not everything's negative. There's folks that are rooting for you, and there's help available. And that's one of the great things about Threads, where you found me, I found you. You had my friend Dimitri on the show. You had my friend, a couple other my friends on. It's just like I met Dimitri on Threads, and then I flew to New York, and we hung out together for 2 days. How crazy is that?
That's the funniest thing, because everybody I've had on that has met people on Threads talks about how weird it is that they've actually met these people in real life. They've hung out. I just had Johnny Creative on, so Johnny Edwards, yesterday. And he was telling the same story. He's like, I meet people that I talk to on this internet platform, but these are people I actually want to hang out with. And it's so neat that platform has brought people together in a real world scenario, not just talking to each other in a message or on a post, but in real life. It's an incredible thing to hear.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting my friend Bettina, who you had on the show.
Oh, she's incredible. Her story.
We're going to meet up in Beverly Hills at the LSI Leica conference in October. So
nice.
I really admire. I mean, she got to hang out with one of my most biggest idols in photography, Elliot Erwitt.
Yep.
And that's just crazy to me that she knew him. And I just, his work changed my life. So, I think she's probably one of the best portrait artists I've ever seen. And I wouldn't know about her except through Threads. And so we're going to meet up and
that's
have
amazing.
dinner or something and talk photography. It's really a great tool to meet people and try to change people's lives. And I'm willing to put up with the negative stuff to get those positive things.
Yeah, I met Bettina through Threads as well. And when I asked her, because I agree with you, I think the way she captures the essence of people is second to none. She is such a talent. She has an eye, the way she and it's crazy because she uses natural light. So
I know.
I was fortunate enough through my partnership with Hobolight to send her a Avant creator's kit. So she has an Avant setup for lighting now. Which to me is crazy to think that I have the ability to call up a company like Hobolight that supports me and say, hey, can I send a kit to this person? And they're so behind me and what I do that they always help me out.
Well, can I just say that I had a Hobolight before it was cool to have a Hobolight?
There you go.
I just have a little one that I use for my product photography.
Yeah.
But I got it about a year ago, and that thing is very neat. So yeah, I think they're not only cool looking, they function very well.
Yes.
And they're extremely well made. So I think you got a good sponsor behind you. I don't have a lot of call at the moment for additive lighting, but there have been times in my career where I've used it a lot, and I would highly recommend them.
Well, if you ever need to borrow a pro kit for anything,
okay,
I
appreciate it.
My sister in Seattle has one.
Okay.
I haven't picked it up yet. Just let me know and I'll be like, hey, somebody's coming to grab that.
at the moment, I'm good. I actually still have, oh my gosh, from my cinema days, I've got a couple of Aries. I've got a couple of really big, like 5,000 watt daylight light banks. I've got some Kino flows. I got a warehouse full of this crap and I don't use it anymore. I got to get rid of it.
It's amazing how fast everything piles up, right?
Oh, well, I used to do what you're doing. I used to host several photography podcasts. And as a result, people would send me stuff unsolicited. And a camera would show up, or a lens would show up, or a thing would show up. And, I actually found a closet the other day that has a couple of things I never even opened. Because I got so much of this stuff, I couldn't deal with it. And we always told people, don't send things unsolicited, because I'm not sending them back. And they still send them anyway. And it was, there's too much to do. And my policy was I never reviewed anything that I was going to give a bad review to. And the reason is there were so many things that were good that I didn't have time to get to, that I didn't want to waste time talking about bad stuff.
That's fair. I had a lucrative financial offer from a company. I won't even talk about what the product they made, but it in no way reflected what I'm about. And I looked at the dollar figure, and I'm like, well, for a new guy, that's pretty impressive. And my brain's like, okay, well, that can cover the mortgage. That can cover, I have 5 kids and all their birthdays are within a few months of each other. And I'm like, that could cover birthdays. And I was like close to saying yes, but I sat there and thought about it and thought about what I wanted to be and who I am. And it didn't work. So I kindly declined. And for a while, I second guessed myself. I'm like, oh, I should email him back and just say, yeah, I'll do it. But I think staying authentic to my path is what's going to help establish the Life of Phys podcast for what it is.
Well, you have an interesting hook, Tyson, that nobody else has that I've seen. And your focus is on community. And that's where we should go next, is talk more about this Threads thing, because it's the first online place that I've seen in a long time that actually developed a community. Everyone uses that word as a marketing phrase.
Yeah.
But Threads is actually delivering on it. Now, Twitter, very early days, was sort of that way. Flickr, very early days, was sort of that way. But now it's all just commerce, and big companies own these things, and they just care about this quarter's profits. And so I don't know what's going to happen to Threads. If it goes the way that most people do, it'll stop being effective at some point. But I figure as long as it is, why not enjoy it?
That's my outlook on it as well. When I finally saw it for the first time, and I was like, okay, it's kind of like an early adaptation of Twitter, where it was fun and people were willing to communicate before it got so competitive. And I really don't believe there can be, art is so selective and self-driven that the only time you really have competition is when you let somebody else get in your head. Because if you're doing it for yourself and you're doing it for your true passion of that craft, none of the other stuff, you can be inspired by people, but they're not competition, right? So I have this weird look, and then Threads came about, and I started out using this hashtag community over competition. And then I started to get responses from it, and people were like, man, I love that. I love the fact that you just want to build people. So I'm taking the advantage of Threads at this current moment to build the biggest community of people that are willing to help, are willing to share their knowledge, are willing to talk people down off the ledge when they're having a bad go. And then if Threads gets to how the other platforms are, I still have this contact structure of people that we can just find a way to continue to do it without needing the social media platform.
Yeah, you can build your own community, and I'll make a recommendation right now. Get familiar with Mighty Networks.
Mighty Networks?
Yeah, Mighty Networks. That's a platform that you can move everybody to eventually, where you can do even way more things, and it'll be a place that you control. And I built a network there called iPhonePhotoTeam.com. I'm divested of my portion of it. I no longer own it, but it started out pretty cool. I don't know what the people who bought it are doing with it, but it gives you a sense of what can be done with Mighty Networks. But I think that's a good plan, to have some kind of exit strategy, because if it does change, you want to have a place to take everybody. And, regarding competition, My good friend Scott Kelby and I were in competition, both by most people's standards, for a long time. And yet he would have me come speak at Photoshop World. He would have me come teach on his platform, Kelby One. And people say, why? It's because we believe in co-opetition. That's what we called it. We cooperate with each other, even though we're competition, because at the end of the day, there's very little true competition. It's, as you said, art is expansive. And one thing I do feel that some people have to learn is like, you giving praise to somebody else doesn't diminish what's out there for you.
Yeah.
And somebody else winning doesn't mean there's nothing else to win. Everybody can win. There's an abundance of opportunity. We don't need to treat creativity like it's a scarce item. There's no scarcity when it comes to creativity. It's like love. You can't say, well, there's only 8 ounces of love in the world. There's as much love as you want. You just got to make it. That's what the Beatles said.
And when I sat down to create this platform that we are talking on currently, I was just throwing around ideas in my brain. You want to get as much notoriety for what you're doing to get the most listens, to get the most people to help it grow. But when I was looking at that, I didn't want to be like every other podcast that deal with creativity, right? I wanted to get the mental health factor in, because photography was my therapy that helped save my life. I wanted to get all levels of creatives and artists on, from the beginner to the seasoned professional, because everybody's story deserves to be heard. And somebody can take something from somebody's story that, 99% of the people, it would just go right over their head. But one person picks up something in that story and it changes the outlook for them. I mean, that's a success right there to me.
Obviously, I agree with you. And I do understand that a lot of people are hurting. And one of the things, if you look at my Threads profile, the last thing it says, I'm rooting for you.
Yep. I love that.
I think it's important to root for each other. And I remember a time when we used to do that normally. And I remember one time I got a car I was particularly happy about. And I was on Twitter and I said, oh, look, I got this car. And I was really jazzed. And I was sharing it in the same way that, I used to before there was internet, with my buddies. And everybody said, oh, that's cool. They'd come over and look. And everybody was happy for me. Now it was, oh, you're just bragging.
Yeah.
We used to root for each other. Let's go back to that.
Yeah. I use my personal Threads profile to lift up as many people as I can. So most of the posts on it, like I'll go through, I'll do 3 or 4 photos, but I'm always sharing other people's work. I'm always congratulating people on successes. Currently Devin Allen, absolutely love all the work Devin Allen's put out. And I love to share it. I love to share, people put out a book. I'll help share it. People put out an image that just blows me away. I share it and I'm like, you need to follow this guy or this girl right away. Like, this person you don't sleep on this one, because this is amazing. Anything I can do to support other people in their craft, to brighten their day a little bit, or just to help, I'm all for it.
The more of that you do, the more it comes back to you. I mean, you had Dimitri on. Dimitri's very active along the same lines. He's constantly promoting people.
Yep.
And it's easy to not notice, because at first when I started following him, I followed him just because he did that. Then I look, he's a spectacular photographer.
Amazing.
And that can get lost a little bit because he's such a nice guy, but he's really a spectacular photographer. And I happen to think that there is a nexus between those who are giving and empathetic and those who are good at art, because the opposite does not appear to be true based on my 5 decades worth of experience. The people that are jerks tend not to be very good at art.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, Karan. I posted a photo the other day of, I think it was my Siwash Rock sunset photo. And she messaged me and she's like, I know you so much from your podcast and helping you through Hobo Light. I sometimes forget that you're an amazing photographer. And
Yeah, that's important.
it just was it struck a different chord with me, because I was like, oh, so people are starting to know me for the podcast and my voice and what I'm sharing, that they forget that photography is what brought me to where I'm at. So it's, it's really cool when people love what I'm doing with my voice, but then they're like, man, that image was amazing. And it still gets you excited when people love your work.
Yeah, everybody likes affirmation.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. And I think that we don't have enough of it. I tell people all the time, look, I am the least likely person in the world to have succeeded at this. I mean, I'm just a schmo, and I'm not as good a photographer as most of the people I compete with when I do compete. But I'm pretty good at the business side, so that helps me. And I'm very, very dedicated to what I do, and I stick with it. At the end of the day, if I can do it, Dyson, anybody can do it, and I really mean that. I'm the most screwed up screw up there is, and if I can pull it off, then I think there's room for everybody to pull it off. But I do want to say one thing. You mentioned, talking about being good at photography. I did too. That's not even a prerequisite to being successful at it.
Exactly.
There's a very famous wedding photographer that most of your audience probably won't be familiar with. Her name is Bambi Cantrell.
I know Bambi.
She was more famous 10 years ago than she is now. She's at the twilight of her career as well. But she was one of the first women to really break through and have a big name out on the circuit. And, she's a wedding photographer, an incredibly talented one. And I taught a few workshops with her, and we were looking at a portfolio of somebody, and technically it really kind of needed a lot of help. But the person was extremely good at capturing great expressions on their subjects. And Bambi said, of all the photography we've looked at, this is the best because expression over perfection sells every time. And that really stuck with me. So you don't even have to be the best to be successful. You just have to be very good at conveying emotion. So one trick that I try to tell people to do, now it's a bit ethereal, but if you can figure it out, it'll help you. And that is to feel your way to a photograph. What does this thing make you feel? If you can articulate that through your image. I posted a picture today on Threads of an elderly man with his 3 Bernese Mountain Dogs.
Yep.
And I love it because all 3 of the dogs are just looking up at him adoringly. They're getting their key from him. And, whether the picture is technically good or not is irrelevant because that moment is so sweet. And that's where we can all be successful. We can protect important moments, and we become what I call high priests and priestesses of memory protection. And that might be our memory. It might be somebody else's memory, but it's still very important. And it's a sacred duty. I think, I've always looked at this job, Tyson, as a sacred duty. I'm out here protecting memories for people that, maybe 5 decades later will mean something to them. I looked through my old photographs a lot during the pandemic, and it really brought me a lot of comfort as my friends around me were dying. And I lost 36 friends and family to COVID. And, the photographs were the thing that kept me connected.
That's, I agree with you. I think overall, over everything, over print selling or licensing photos, we're preserving time. Yep. We're preserving a moment that will never happen again. It may be similar, but it will never be the same. And I started doing this thing a couple of years ago when I would go out for my photo walks early in the morning. I love early. So 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I just love how still the world is. And I look for things that catch my eye, and I'll take a photo of it. And to some people, it means nothing. To me, it means everything. Or I saw just the way the light hit a dumpster, or there was a recycle bin that had a chain around it that was locked, like it was locked to a drainage pipe. And it just makes me laugh. It's just something that's so strange. Why would it be locked up? But I like the way it looks. And that inspired me to start shooting dumpsters and alleyways. And then it just I would capture whatever my eye saw that meant something to me. And you post it, and then people will message you or they comment on it, and they see 50 different things that I wasn't even focused on. And I love the story. I love how an image that I took focused on one thing, like a lock, turned into people seeing all these different things in that image. They experienced that image for themselves in their way, and they shared that with me. So that was something that I found very rewarding for my photography journey.
Cool.
Yeah, it's neat. It's I love Threads. I think the way it's laid out, I think everything about it is fantastic.
Yeah, it's built for true communication, and everyone talks about, well, it doesn't have this feature, doesn't have that feature. Yeah, it doesn't have all the spam and porn bots and everything else that Instagram does. And it doesn't even matter. This is the same goes for cameras. People say, well, I'll get that camera is never going to sell because it doesn't have this, doesn't have that. People don't buy things because of what it doesn't have. They buy it because of what it does have. And they use Threads because of what it does do, which is allow connections. People like me to you, me to Bettina, me to Dimitri, and the people that they meet. And then they talk about things too. And then it truly does have this 6 degrees of separation effect. And you can find resources. I found a guy in New York who's trying to mentor some young kids. Some of these kids don't even know where their next meal is going to come from. So I'm going to get them hooked up with some corporate money, because that should not be what gets in the way of you making pictures. You need to at least be able to eat.
Yes.
There are different things we all can do, and we can't, you can't help everybody. That's for sure. I sometimes am frustrated by that. But do you know the story of the starfish?
I don't.
I'll share an old man story then with you. Young boy and his grandfather are walking down a beach, and there's been a high tide and low tide event that kind of got mixed up, and there's a bunch of starfish that are on the beach, and the tide is out, and they're all dying in the sun. They're baking in the sun. And the grandfather picks up one of the starfish and throws it back into the ocean. The little boy says, Grandpa, that's not going to do any good. There are thousands of these starfish. You can't do any good for them. He said, but I did good for that one. And that's what we have to concentrate on, the one person or two persons that we can help. If we all do that, then generally everybody's going to get what they need. But I do feel like Threads has the ability to connect us and to see to it that we are providing the feedback that folks need to be encouraged at the very least, and to find methodologies to get things to help them. And I do want to say this before we go, Tyson, I'm going to do something that maybe has not been done by any of your other guests. I'm going to warranty my appearance here. I'm issuing a warranty, and that is, if there's anything that we've talked about that you're not clear on or that you need my help with, send me an email, scott@scottbourne.com, and I will answer it and try to help you for free. I won't ask you to buy anything, sign up for anything. Just try to help. I just ask that you limit it to one question per email, because I do get a lot of email, and I do answer it all. It might take me a day or two to get to you, but I want to warranty this appearance so that after the sale, so to speak, if there's something you missed, you can ask me and I'll try to help you.
I appreciate that. So I don't know if you've heard in past episodes, I have a project that's near and dear to me. Working with indigenous communities. I'm trying to find a way to get the youth of the communities to have cameras in their hands and capture life on their land in ways that the general public don't see. So I've reached out to companies like Camp Snap, just trying to find a way to partner with someone that can see the vision. Really what it is there's a group of, I don't know, I've got about 10 people that want to be involved in mentoring the youth on community or on reservation and helping them grow as photographers. So I've had this dream for a long time I want to help my own community, which is Lower Nicola in Merritt, British Columbia. I want to help the youth see that a lot of them are losing, they're losing that pride of who they are. And I want them to learn that they can capture beauty where they live. So I want to get 10 cameras into the hands of youth on reserve, let them use them for 30 days, have them send them back. We create a contact sheet. We get together as a group and we talk about all of the images, and we discuss. We don't critique. We offer wisdom and insight into the work. And then the person, I just had Ricky, Shubio from, New Jersey on, and he gave me this idea. He's like, when you look through and you find the one or two that show promise or super excited about what they're doing, in our group of 10 people, we find a secondhand camera to ship to them to keep as their own. And the person who shipped the camera now becomes that, youth's mentor for a year or longer to help them continue to grow in their passion for shooting images. But getting it off the ground has been super difficult. I don't even know where to take that first step.
Well, let's talk offline about that. But the bottom line is what we need to do is, like I said at the beginning of the show, we need to productize this. And every potential sponsor that you talk to, Tyson, listens to the same radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me? Yeah. So we got to show them what's in it for them. So we'll create a pitch deck.
Okay.
That we treat it just like a launch of a startup or a new product announcement on Kickstarter, whatever. We create a pitch deck. We go through the features and benefits of the product, and the product in this case is the project, and I can help you with that. So let's work on that offline.
Appreciate that, Scott. We will definitely be in touch.
And FYI, I have done something very similar many, many years ago in the inner city community in Seattle. I worked with disadvantaged youth, and we put 50 cameras in their hands for a couple of weeks, and we just gave them all a roll of film. And I worked with this is back in the lab days when there were black and white darkroom labs everywhere. And we took all the pictures and got them developed. And the main reason we actually did it was because I found that all these inner city youth, they didn't eat on weekends because there was no school lunches. So we started the program to where they could get a meal. And that was the real reason we did it. And then they all ended up being spectacular photographers. A couple of them went on to end up being working press photographers 20 years later. And we gave them all Pentax K1000s, I think, and 50 millimeter lens and a roll of Tri-X. It was amazing what they came up with. So we can do this. It's
amazing.
It's been done before. It just requires a little elbow grease.
Oh, I look forward to getting that information from you and getting this thing working. It's been on my mind for about 5 years now, and just trying to, when you don't know where to go, it's really hard to get that first step happening. You know what I mean?
Well, when you have a 70-year-old guy like me on your podcast, the one thing is I've been up and down the road a bunch of times. I've been to every exit. I know where the road's closed and what you got to do. So,
oh, that's incredible. I noticed at one point you worked with Olympus. You were Olympus Visionary.
I was for almost 5 years before the pandemic. And I was up until, I would probably still be an Olympus Visionary, but they decided to close the camera division and sell it to a Japanese holding company called JIP. And that forever altered the trajectory of the company. And it really wasn't the same. And between that and the pandemic and some new opportunities I had and some health issues, I ended up resigning. But it was a spectacular honor. I mean, to be asked by a major brand to be one of their spokespeople, you can imagine that everybody wants that job. And here's a hint: the way you get that job is they find you. Yeah, if you're calling Canon or Nikon, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. They call you. That's how this job works. Anyway, it was a big honor. It was a big honor. Great people. I got to travel the world, meet people, speak at every photo conference you can think of. And I definitely enjoyed the heck out of it. I really did.
Yeah, I saw that. And I know for myself, I work a little bit with Fuji Canada. They send me, I basically just have to send them an email and they'll send me whatever product I want to use. Which is nice. I get it for 3 weeks and get to enjoy myself. But everybody thinks instantly, you have to, like, I'm going to keep chasing the spawn. I'm going to keep chasing them, chase them. And then my life's going to be made because I'm going to get everything for free and I'm going to travel. And, it's a weird sponsorship scenario. I think it's really cool when people have a company come to you because they see not only the value you add, but they also see the work that you produce, and you can move forward with those companies and travel and do that. But that company came to you. That's such a cool thing. I've never had that.
the way it works in the real world is you get known. We talked about, specializing. You get known for something. You get good at it. The camera company decides that audience is an audience they want to reach. You're the best person to do that. They hit you up. And just to give you a really sad note on my story, though, I had actually I had decided to switch to Olympus from Canon because I'm getting old. I've had a bunch of shoulder surgeries and I needed lighter weight kit. And I didn't make that move earlier because there weren't any cameras that had sufficient autofocus for bird photography, the thing I do. There were plenty of cameras I could have switched to, but they just weren't good for autofocus. Olympus was the first company to come up with a truly professional grade autofocus that I could use. So I switched, and then they hired me as a visionary. I would have preferred they hired me and gave me all the equipment. Now, of course, over the years, they gave me tons of equipment, but they also pay you. And that's part of that job. You get paid a stipend, you get paid licensing fees when you sell images, you get paid speakers fees when you speak. So, it wasn't the single source of my income for that 5 years. I made most of my money still licensing images, but it certainly was helpful. And it was mostly just fun because I got to have input into how the cameras are made. I got to help put my input on what I think is the best wildlife lens ever built, the 150-400 zoom that they make. And I got to travel around. I got to give speeches in places like China. It was a big deal. So if you get that call and you get asked, then just so you know, you've arrived. You don't need to have any more imposter syndrome after that. It was a great experience. I'm sad that, they decided to sell the company. It changed everything. I know there's only one or two of the original visionaries left that were visionaries when I was there. It's a different company, but they were great people to work with. I loved them all. And the best thing about being an Olympus Visionary was about once a year, they'd have these visionary meetups where all the visionaries were flown to some special location by Olympus. Like one time they flew us to San Francisco, put us up in a hotel, drove us around in coaches to stop off at all the tourist attractions, take pictures. They had us meet with some Olympus super fans. We got to have a lot of meals together. And then we got to spend a couple of days in meeting rooms talking with the engineers and developers of the next cameras. Those events were the best because we got to spend a lot of time with each other. And I always used to say, I'm the least among everybody here. There was a couple of Pulitzer Prize winners in that bunch. So I felt like, you sure you want me to go? But they did.
Oh, it's awesome. As you probably saw on Threads, I've decided for the next year I'm going to shoot a Ricoh GR3X solely. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then I want to create a coffee table book from the images captured on that spectacular little camera. I know you have one. I know you've used them, but I also noticed. Have two. Oh, do you have both the 3 and the 3X?
I have the 28 and the 40 millimeter.
Nice. I'm still trying to track down a 3. That's my next.
Yeah, I think it's a spectacular camera. For me, the problem is no viewfinder. If it had a viewfinder, I could make it work a lot better. But I'm a guy that doesn't believe in or. I believe in and. So I have Fuji X100 and a Ricoh GR3 and a Leica Q.
Well, yeah, I noticed. Yeah, you just got a Q2 recently, a monochrome, right?
A Q2 monochrome, and I am not giving that sucker up to anybody ever. I'm gonna have that. They're going to bury me with that thing in my hands. It is a spectacular instrument. It is truly, truly special. And I'm not a guy that had done much with Leica, so I never really understood the Leica allure. But now that I have the camera, it's like, oh, that's what they were talking about. So but I have done many projects like what you're talking about. I did a year with just the iPhone.
Yeah.
I did a year with just the Fuji X100. So doing these projects where you constrain yourself, it's always great creativity wise. So I'm looking forward to see what you do. And that camera truly is a camera that punches way above its weight. It doesn't get near enough love. I don't know why. Perhaps because Ricoh Pentax is a smaller company, but
Yeah.
I have to say I'm looking forward to see what you do. And if the GR4 comes out and has a viewfinder, I'm an owner.
Well, if you ever want to get rid of your 3, you let me know.
No, I don't get rid of cameras, Tyson. That's the problem. I don't get rid of cameras or cars.
There you go.
That's the guy said, you want to trade that in? I was like, what? No, I love this car. I just want that one too.
Yeah, I used to have that same problem, but not anymore.
We can talk another time about the trucks I built. I built overland trucks for photography, and sometimes drop 3 times the price of the truck in aftermarket stuff. So guys like you enjoy me.
I love that. I think one of my favorite things is because I don't build them for myself anymore. I work in the office and help other people achieve their dreams for their overland build. Watching a kid build his first overland vehicle and all the pieces falling in place from the time of drop off. We try to make it so they don't get to see it much during the build, and then the time of pickup and their excitement, and they start talking about, okay, I can put this here and I can make something for over here. It's such an awesome experience.
Yeah, that's I did it mostly in the context of being able to go off road for photography, but the idea of a 1-year project is something that I think you will find incredibly beneficial to your creative eye. And everyone's going to say, but you might miss this and you might miss that. And what they're not getting is that you're going to see and grab things you wouldn't have seen had you not limited your creativity options. And that more than makes up for whatever it is you lose.
Exactly. Well, Scott, I've taken up a lot of your time this morning. Where can people follow you? Where's the best place to find you?
I'm on Threads at Bourne.Scott. I don't know why I can't get Scott Bourne. Somebody else got it, but I'm on Threads at Bourne.Scott. And, I that's pretty much the only place I go these days. I hang out there all day. I do have my own website. There's not much on it because I am retired, but if you want to see my work, I do some consulting. If anybody wants mentoring or if they want to have portfolio reviews and stuff, I do some of that. I do occasionally very private workshops, although I don't do a lot of that. I'm not trying to sell anything. So I'm mostly just trying to help where I can. So I'm on Threads. I can answer questions via Threads, or I'm very responsive to email, scott@scottbourne.com. Please don't ask me to text you. I will charge you $48. Text are for young people.
Next time I'm down in your neck of the woods, I'd love to get together, have a coffee, have a chat.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. I don't get up to Canada much, but if you come down here, we can have a day.
Fantastic. All right, Scott. Well, thank you again. Thank you for all your wisdom. I will definitely be touching base with you off microphone to discuss some options for my plan and my project. Cool. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, and I will send you a copy of this once it's all edited for you to listen to before release.
I hope you found it helpful.
Oh, extremely. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.